Hi guys. Today in class we're going to touch on cell division. So I'm going to talk to you about your objective before I get into things. Our objectives is from the outcome of studies. Students will learn the difference between asexual reproduction, binary fission, mitosis, and meiosis, and be able to describe the behavior of genetic material as cells undergo various divisions, distinguish between gamete cells and somatic cells, as well as the synthesis of genetic information which occurs during fertilization. So obviously there's a lot of terms in there we don't know quite yet, but that's what today is for. So I have included a little timeline of what we are going to do. Lots of activities, lots of different things to keep you guys stimulated and going. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction. Then we have a jigsaw activity I'm going to do to introduce you guys to each topic very lightly. Then I'm going to touch on binary fission, mitosis, and then Gabe's going to come up here for some meiosis and a meiosis video, and a little bit of a activity for you guys hands-on. And then Kim's going to come up here for some sexual reproduction. And yeah, that sounded really good, hey? And as well as we're going to do a little game with you guys to end it off. So, my introduction to cell division. You guys like my, actually let's dim the lights a bit so you can see it a little bit better. This might be a little bit, oh, there we go. Oh,
That's fine.
that's, can you guys kind of see it, or?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's better?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Since I'd rather not have you not be able to see anything I'm talking about. So, cell division. My little joke of the day is let's make like an amoeba and split. And as you can see, I have a cell doing division on the board. So that's what cell division is. No, I'm kidding. And that's the end. No, so I wanted to introduce you guys to some interesting facts here before we get into it to kind of get you interested in the topic we have. So our bodies contain between 75 to 100 trillion cells. And the human, so like I said, we have trillions of cells, and every day your body is making 300 billion new cells, so that's a lot of cells. You guys all started off as a single cell zygote though, so it's pretty incredible that can go from one cell to close to 100 trillion cells. So kind of, you guys were touching on this again, humans have 46 chromosomes, that's 23 pairs, and that's just specific to humans. Like for my example up here is a fern has 1,262 of them. So it's not even based on how complex the organism is. Like a fern is somewhat of a simple plant, you think, compared to us, and they have obviously a lot more chromosomes. So some other cool facts, your bones would not be able to elongate, hair would not be able to grow out, and muscles would not be able to thicken without cell division. So how you grow is cell division. Your cells aren't getting bigger, they're multiplying, right? A giraffe doesn't have 10 times the size of cells you do, maybe he has more cells. So that's kind of just my introduction to get you guys thinking about some cell division. So now we're gonna start on my fun activity. Obviously you guys like the jigsaw activity that we did in our class. I can't do that with you guys with this presentation, so I'm modifying it, so bear with me. Or else I would split you guys up into groups of 4. So instead we're kind of going to do this format. So how it's going to work is, we're going to have four different topics for this jigsaw. Just for demonstration's sake, I'll read the first one for you guys, and then I want you to keep in mind these 2 questions while I read it out. On the next 3, I want one of you guys to read it out loud. So just kind of think about how can I put this into my own words, and what are the kind of some of the important terms that you think you can pull from that. There's no right or wrong answer. I'll show you guys what I think the important terms are after, but yeah. And let's begin. So I'll read you guys out this one nice and clear and slowly when you guys read too, just so we can understand everything. So prokaryotes, this isn't a term you guys have come across yet. Again, this is just an overview. I want you to pick up some of the main important terms. So prokaryotes, single-celled organisms, are thought as one of the simplest forms of creatures on the earth today. Even though some later evolved into eukaryotes, multicellular organisms, they still reproduce using a process called binary fission. Less complex than eukaryotic reproduction, binary fission allows multiple types of prokaryotes to reproduce rather quickly and even to form innumerable societies. Another condition that influences prokaryote reproduction is the environment. For example, if the temperature is too hot or cold, this may impact the rate of reproduction of binary fission. If the conditions are ideal, however, such as in a laboratory setting, prokaryotes have the ability to rapidly produce from millions to billions of new cells. Binary fission is a type of cell division in which a parent cell copies its genetic material and then divides, transforming into two new daughter cells. Each new cell having one complete copy of genetic instructions necessary to run the cell. The daughter cells are clones, exact copies of the parent cell that they give rise to. Even though this is a rather simple form of reproduction, prokaryotes have the advantage of being able to effectively become resilient to harmful conditions because they have the ability to pass down identical genetic information to new daughter cells. So, any volunteers to kind of summarize the binary fission paragraph we just read? I actually want you guys to try to do it. I'm gonna make you actually learn in this. It's like I said, just give me a couple sentences to what I said. Yeah.
Binary fission is essential for prokaryotes to create exact clones of themselves and therefore pass down the genetic information that lets them become resilient to harmful conditions.
Awesome. Resilient. That's gonna be wrong. Can you spell it for me? To be resilient. What was the rest of that?
Carry on genetic information, be resilient to harmful conditions.
Awesome. Like it. It's perfect. That's perfect. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And is there a few terms that you guys can give me that kind of popped out from that you think that we're going to need to learn or touch on more of?
Prokaryotes and eukaryotes.
And what exactly were prokaryotes?
Single cell.
Single cell? Yeah. So we talked about single celled already. So that's kind of I guess an extra step to that term. So single celled. Single celled. Any other important terms that you guys came across?
Binary fission.
Binary fission, yeah. Anything else? Okay, so I'll show you the ones I got. Oh, I'm so sneaky. Oh, look at me with my white writing. So those are the terms that I thought that were important that you guys kind of need to remember or to think about as we dive into these subjects. Reproduction, very simple term. A parent cell. A parent cell is the one that's dividing into daughter cells, right? Those are the clones that we were talking about. And like I said, clones, dividing, my terms are there. Very simple terms, just for you guys to kind of keep in mind since we're looking at these new topics. So, let's go back. So, I think that's the next one. Let's check. Mitosis. Who, with a loud and clear voice, wants to read mitosis for me, and very slowly?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
All right. What do your intestines, the yeast in bread dough, and a developing frog all have in common? Among other things, they all have cells that carry out mitosis. dividing to produce more cells that are genetically identical to themselves. Why do these very different organisms and tissues all need mitosis? Intestinal cells have to be replaced as they wear out. Yeast cells need to reproduce to keep their population growing. And a tadpole must make new cells as it grows bigger and more complex. Mitosis is a type of cell division in which one cell, the mother cell, divides to produce two new cells, the daughter cells, that are genetically identical to itself. The great majority of the cell divisions that happen in your body involve mitosis. During development and growth, mitosis populates an organism's body with cells, and throughout an organism's life, it replaces old, worn-out cells with new ones. In all of these cases, the goal of mitosis is to make sure that each daughter cell gets a perfect, full set of chromosomes. Cells with too few or too many chromosomes usually don't function well. They do not survive, or they may even cause cancer. So when cells undergo mitosis, they don't just divide your DNA at random and toss it into piles for the two daughter cells. Instead, they split up their duplicated chromosomes in a carefully organized series of steps.
Awesome. Thanks for doing that. So, can you guys give me your summary of what we just read? I need to exit out of here to do that. Any volunteers before I pick on people? Keep it pretty general. I'm okay with that.
The mother cell dividing into daughter cells.
Perfect. Thank you. Mother cells dividing into, you said daughter cells?
Yep.
Anything else that we can take from that paragraph? I can go back to if you guys want to just skim over it again. Again, keep in mind I'm going to make you pull out important terms too. So if you guys see any right now.
Splitting up duplicated chromosomes.
Perfect.
It's
Bear with me.
how the body repairs itself.
Totally. Again, bear with me on my typing right now. Anything else you guys pulled that's important from that we're gonna probably touch more on? Okay, let's move on to key terms then. So mitosis, right? What else?
Chromosomes.
Yeah. How many? Do you remember how many the human body has? 46.
46.
Yeah, and so how many pairs is that then?
23.
Yeah. Any others?
DNA.
That's a good one. One more, and I'll let you guys, I'll show you mine.
Can you do that?
Yeah? You pick something really simple, like this. Wow, what a great idea. And I can't even spell it. Okay, so these are what I came up with. So mitosis, cell division, mother cells, daughter cells, chromosome, genetically identical. Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next. And who is going to be my volunteer on sexual reproduction? Someone who hasn't already read, please read.
I can go with you.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
During sexual reproduction, two parents are involved. Most animals are dioecious, meaning there is a separate male and female sex, with the male producing sperm and the female producing eggs. When a sperm and egg meet during fertilization, the zygote, the first cell of a new organism, is formed. This process combines the genetic material from both parents. The resulting organism will be genetically unique. The zygote will divide by mitosis and grow into the embryo. Animals often have gonads, organs that produce eggs or sperm. The male gonads are the testes, and the female gonads are the ovaries. Testes produce sperm, ovaries produce eggs. Sperm and egg, the two sex cells, are known as gametes and can combine two different ways, both of which combine the genetic material from the two parents. Gametes have half the amount of the genetic material of a regular body cell. They are haploid cells. In humans, gametes have one set of 23 chromosomes. Gametes are produced through a special type of cell division known as meiosis. Normal human cells have 46 chromosomes. They are diploid cells with two sets of 23 chromosomes, 23 pairs.
So what's kind of, you guys can kind of draw on is obviously a lot of the important terms from each of these are carrying over. And that's how they're all related. They're cell division, right? So if we can give me a quick summary here. I know I'm making you do lots, this is the worst. Throw a sentence at me.
Sperm and egg or gametes.
Yeah. And what do? What is a sperm and egg? They combine.
Make babies.
Yeah. But what's a more technical word for a baby?
Offspring.
Yeah. Even further, I'm looking for zygotes, right? So, what are some key terms from there? Again, they can be like similar terms from the other ones we were doing.
Meiosis.
Yeah.
Haploid cells, diploid cells.
Again, we were talking about the chromosomes, how many there were, right? So, the ones that I thought were important. Sexual reproduction, that was the topic of the last one. Sperm and egg, zygotes, gonads, ovary and testes, gametes, and chromosomes, right? So last one. So, just to not pain you guys, I'll read this last one for you. So, do you have all your parents' chromosomes? No, you only receive half of your mother's chromosomes and half of your father's chromosomes. If you inherited them all, you would have twice the number of chromosomes that you're supposed to have. Humans typically have 23 pairs of chromosomes. Remember guys, we've been hitting this on most of them, so it must be an important point. If you received all your parents' chromosomes, you would have 46 pairs. Meiosis is a great process that shuffles the cell's genes around. Plants do it, animals do it, and even fungi do it sometimes. Instead of creating two new cells with equal numbers of chromosomes like mitosis, the cell does a second division soon after the first. Summarize for me, please. So, meiosis. What does it do? It's a gene shuffler, right? Meiosis shuffles the genes around to give variation, right? That's how I would quickly summarize it for you guys. Throw some key terms at me. What was chromosomes? Thank you.
Meiosis.
Yeah. Any other?
Inherited.
Yeah, I like that too. So, the ones that I was looking at, it's only 3. So, gene, I like all those too. So add those onto your list as well. So great job, guys, with the jigsaw. Again, I don't expect you guys to know this right away. This is kind of just an introduction to the topics before we touch on it, kind of giving you a broad scope before we start. So now I'm going to actually give you what I'm specifically looking for, and we're going to start back with binary fission. So before I really get into anything here, I really want you guys to, it's a very simple but effective animation I want you guys to look at. And it kind of just sums up binary fission really nicely for us too, because it is a very simple process. So I'll talk about asexual reproduction here. So asexual reproduction occurs when only one parent supplies the information to the offspring. Sexual reproduction, like we talked before, was 2 parents. 5 minutes? Awesome, thank you. The genetic material of the parents is identical to the offspring. So kind of some common examples is bacteria and fungi. So what do you guys think would be some advantages and disadvantages to this type of reproduction, asexual reproduction? So from our jigsaw, we read that sexual reproduction is a gene shuffler, right? So when you have asexual reproduction, we're not shuffling genes, so we're not getting variation. So why would that be a problem? My kind of example for you guys would be something like in Edmonton, we get some pretty extreme conditions, right? And lots of variation. Well, this sometimes isn't very good for an organism that doesn't have a lot of variation, right? They need, like they said, like the laboratory settings that are straightforward for them because they don't have the genes to have for the variation. Why would this be an advantage though? Why is asexual reproduction an advantage?
Quicker for reproduction.
That's exactly what I was looking for. It's quick and dirty, right? It's very efficient. It gets the job done. Just like the animation, like it's happening very quickly and it's efficient, right? So that kind of leads me into binary fission. The definition that I would use is the splitting of a single-celled organism into 2 new organisms, a form of sexual reproduction. The cell first duplicates its DNA content. The cell division occurs with each new cell having a copy of its genetic material, and it results in 2 identical offspring clones. So again, simple example, amoeba and bacteria. So next, this is just a funny meme for you guys to remember it, since I know you all love this song. Mitosis. So I wanted to use, I found a really cool infographic for mitosis to kind of very simply explain it to you guys, so we're going to look at that next. Oh wow, it's a little bit too zoomed for my liking. I don't know if you guys, it's a little bit small writing, so I'll read it out to you guys. Give you a second to kind of look at it. I really like, I think the drawings are really great, it's really simple, and it gives you guys a really good idea of how mitosis works. So how will you remember mitosis? Well, it's the only division that happens in your toes. So mitosis, in your toes, right? You guys are gonna all remember that now. That's something you're never gonna mess up on your test, and I'm not gonna see it on your test. So, like it says on here, sorry, I apologize for the small writing, an easy way to remember yourself of the difference between mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis is the process of making an identical copy of a somatic, which is a body cell. This can occur in any cell in plant or animal, except cells used for sexual reproduction. So for example, skin cells, blood cells, and muscle cells all replicate by mitosis. The cells make identical copies, like we said before, clones, of themselves, so old or damaged dying cells can be replaced. So kind of 3 ways that mitosis occurs. I love the visuals of the drawings. During growth, we got a small duck going to a big duck. During repair, mended broken leg. And for renewal as well. I guess I can go like this and show you too. And for renewal. Mitosis can also create new individuals via asexual reproduction. So that was binary fission again we were looking at. So every cell in the body has DNA in the nucleus, and this DNA consists of a number of individual chromosomes in the humans, and there are 46, like I've said 100 times. The purpose of mitosis is to duplicate the genetic information in the cell and to make sure each of the 2 resulting cells gets identical copies. So that is, like, I love this graphic. It's something great that you guys can study off of. And that's kind of my introduction into binary fission and mitosis. And now Gabe's going to jump in for me.
Alright, so next page we're doing your introduction to mitosis and introduction to cell division. Now we are going to talk about meiosis, so the other major cell division process. And before we get into kind of the structure and the formation of meiosis and all that stuff, we're going to go through some key terminology. Some has been touched on in the mitosis section and in your jigsaw, but other parts might be specific to mitosis, so we'll have a look at that. And here's our little cartoon showing meiosis, and maybe you'll understand this a little better once you know some of the terminology, but they're being separated away from each other. Okay, so in this section, just a little bit of a review here from the beginning. We're going to be going through the key terms and just emphasizing those key terms and how you will have to remember these key terms as you go through the process. And we're going to have lots of practice with this, so there's no new terms that should come up. You should be pretty comfortable with this after we've gone through about 3 times with them. So the next part will be modeling the meiosis process. So this is where I'll actually show you guys what meiosis is all about and how it goes through and the specific steps, emphasizing certain key terms that we've covered in the first part during this process. It's going to be what I'm going to be doing. And then we'll have an interactive video with some questions just kind of to remind you guys certain terminology that you might need to know, again, emphasizing the importance of certain terminology that you might not be comfortable with. And then finally we have a pipe cleaner activity. So I have a little setup here that I'm going to show you guys through this overhead. Yeah, we'll go from there. So the first major terms that we talk about when we talk about meiosis is meiosis and gametes. So meiosis is the cell division process that makes gametes, or sex cells, that are required for sexual reproduction. And so here's a bit of a picture from your textbook showing the actual process. We're going to go into much more detail and have a lot of practice with this. So this is just your first glance at it. And then we also, just the other key term is gametes. So that's just another fancy word for sex cell. So those are the 2 first terms that we want to emphasize. The next 3 are kind of confusing at times for some students. So I'm going to go through this as slowly as possible and give you guys many examples. So chromosomes is the first one. So a chromosome can exist both in this singular form and in this duplicated form. So this is emphasized here on this bottom. So we have the single chromosome, and when it gets prepared to go through the cell division, it duplicates. This is still one chromosome, it's just duplicated its information. And within this chromosome, you have 2 sister chromatids. And so what that is just identical chromosomes that are connected by our next term, which is the centromere. And so this is your connection from the top part of your chromosome to the bottom. This is all bundled DNA in a tube structure. It's a natural structure, but and it's all connected by the centromere. The centromere is also where microtubules connect. And so microtubules are little protein ropes, little protein filaments that actually pull the chromosomes apart during cell division. They're attached to the end of the cell, and when the cell kind of comes in on itself and then separates, these microtubules provide that force that pulls them apart in their pairs or at the centromere. So those are those 3 key terms that I want to emphasize. The next terms, and they're very confused often for students, is genes and alleles. So a gene is a specific trait on your chromosome. It's coding a specific trait. So when your DNA is read and it's made by a certain enzyme, which is just the thing that makes your DNA and replication and all this stuff, it looks over this code and finds out what it's going to make. So a certain trait, for example, would be eye color. So we'll take the spot A on the very top. I don't know if you can see it that well, but A at the top of the chromosome could be the gene that gives the region and the information for eye color. Now, an allele is a variation of a gene. So you all know that we have green eyes, blue eyes, brown eyes. Alleles tell a specific story. So these 2 chromosomes, they're not identical. They exist together because, we'll see in the next slide, they're homologous chromosomes. And so we'll explain that later, but these are not identical. They both code for eye color at the top. The allele on each chromosome is different. So on this chromosome, it would be brown eyes. And on this chromosome, it would be blue eyes. So the gene is the same. The gene codes for eye color. The allele is different. That's where you get a little bit of variation in terms of what the gene is telling the DNA creating enzyme. So those are the 2 terms there. And now we're looking at homologous chromosomes. So these are pairs of chromosomes that have the same genes on them. They might have different alleles, however. One is obtained from your father, your paternal chromosome, and one is obtained from your mother, your maternal chromosome. So during sexual reproduction, which we will find in our sexual reproduction talk, it's going to be given by Kim, we combine the two gametes and form a zygote, as Paige pointed out at the start. So they exist together like this, and when it's time for cell division, meiosis, they will replicate into their homologous chromosomes. So they have the same gene information on there, they just might be different in terms of alleles and the variation of those genes. Okay, and so that's how they look like when they prepare for the first division event. So homologous chromosomes. And so a term that's specific to meiosis is crossing over. And so the variation we talked about that happens in eukaryotes or multicellular organisms comes from this process. So you have your paternal and maternal, father and mother homologous chromosomes. They might have different alleles, so they're different colors here because they might show a different allele. And they actually cross over before they divide in the first division of meiosis. And we're going to go into more depth with that. But right now, just know that they cross over and they actually switch parts of their chromosome. So this might have a different allele now than this was. So this was its allele. It's now crossed over to the maternal chromosome. They both code for the same thing, but the allele might be a little bit different on the maternal and paternal chromosome. So that's the homologous pair and crossing over. So now, we're going to go through a little video in a second. Sorry, I'm going to track back here. I'm going to show you guys the process of mitosis. So all these terms, I know it's tough to kind of visualize it all. I'm going to try and use it as much as possible in this next process. So let's go over to the document camera. All right. So when we start, we have a cell, and this is our parent cell. And we have one type of chromosome. Say this is our paternal chromosome, or chromosome from our father, and our maternal chromosome, or chromosome from our mother. And this is how it starts off at cell division. So when it divides, it's going to prepare itself for division. So what is it going to do? This is still the paternal cell. It's going to double its information. Now this is still a chromosome, and it's the only difference now is that it's doubled, and these two identical pieces are chromatids. So now that they're prepared, they're homologous chromosomes, they have the same genes on them, they pair together, then they will align in the middle. So this is somewhat aligned, but we'll draw them aligning. Okay. Along the midline. So here we have our centromeres, remember, and our microtubules will connect to these centromeres that are connected to this side. And what happens at the first cell division event, it's ready to divide now, right? This first cell division event, these walls kind of close in on each other and then pull apart. So the microtubules take the pair away. The homologous pair is the first pair that's separated at the beginning. This first cell division is called meiosis 1. And so once that's formed, we have two cells, one with one of the homologous pairs and one with the other. One thing I forgot to show you guys, I apologize for this, is crossing over. So here, before they divide, remember how we talked about crossing over? What happens here at this step? Can anyone tell me? Yeah, exactly. They come across like this. It's kind of a bad drawing, but they come across and they have a part of the other chromosome on there. So instead of looking like that, it will look like this. And so now we see a little bit of variation. And so that other part of the chromosome might have a different allele, it might not, but we're seeing a bit of variation and mixing up of the genes there. So now these two cells, does anyone remember from our earlier talk what these two cells are called on meiosis? When they separate once, the parent cell becomes two daughter cells. Very good. So these are our two daughter cells. Alright, so now that we have our homologous pairs separated, we're going to go through a second cell division. And so these are already kind of in the middle, but just imagine they're kind of floating around in the cell in their individual chromosome bundles. They're already prepared for division. And they will again divide and they will line up. So they'll align again on the midline. So like this. And there's the midline. The same thing happens. So it closes in on itself. The microtubules are attached at the centromere. And now what separates? Does anyone know what each individual part of the chromosomes are? They're the same. They're still chromosome, but in the pair, what is each pair called? So this is a blank to this. Sister chromatid, yeah, sister chromatid. That's where it's separating in the second division. So the second division, the centromere that holds them together is pulled apart by the microtubules, right? And we get these breaking apart into 4 different cells. So this one looks like this. This one looks like that. And that. Okay, so does anyone recognize these then? I'll give you a hint. They take part in sexual reproduction.
A zygote! Or not yet.
Close, close. Before that.
Almost a zygote.
Gametes.
Gametes, there we go, our key term, gametes. So, these two, and this cell division process, again, I apologize, let's look back, is meiosis 2, right? Right, so the second cell division process of meiosis is meiosis 2. So here we go from a parent cell that has an individual copy, one from the father, one from the mother, and now they have only half of that DNA in the second daughter cell, because what's going to happen is, so if this is the mother, then this would be an egg cell. This egg cell will float out, there'll be a sperm, and yes, exactly, they will form a zygote. So this is the mother's DNA, say this one was from the father,
Can
and
you
it
move the
has
paper up a bit?
that. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right, and it'll fuse together to form a zygote with the same amount of DNA as the parent cell and the other parent, but it's different because it comes one from the father, so this would be the paternal chromosome. This would be the maternal chromosome. So that's the general process. Now we're going to get a lot of practice with this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to watch an interactive video with questioning. Yes, I know. Boo. But anyway, we have a little video here showing you guys the process of meiosis. So at this point I would hand out little questions on this sheet so you can follow along. For the purposes of this, I will just ask the questions as we go. So, and click on the meiosis process. So here's our sperm and here's our egg. And in sexual reproduction, they'll meet together. But before this happens, to create these, we have a cell with a nucleus and chromosomes inside. So, I'm going to ask a little bit of a vague question, but let's see if you guys can kind of get your minds around it. Why are these different colors, these chromosomes? They have a partner. That's my hint.
The chromatids thing.
Close. Close. What is the pair called that they exist in? The pair, so you have one chromosome from your mother and one chromosome from your father. They exist in a pair. What is that pair called? Homologous chromosomes, right? So that's why they're a specific color, because when they line up, but before they divide and line up, they duplicate, right? So once they duplicate, they're prepared for division, but they're floating around, right? There's no order between them. So right before they divide, they pair up into their homologous chromosomes. So now, there's them pairing up their homologous chromosomes. So now, we go through the process. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you this question. Did meiosis 1 happen yet?
Yes.
Yes. Do you know why? How can we tell that meiosis 1 happened?
We have 2 new cells.
Exactly. And what were those cells called?
Daughter cells.
Very
Look
good.
at you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good job.
You're killing it.
So yes, so now we have the daughter cells from the original parent cell and the homologous chromosomes separated. Okay. Now we will go through the process. This one's going to go a little bit faster. So they line up along the midline and they divide again. Okay, and so remember that's where the centromere kind of breaks apart and the sister chromatids get pulled apart, right? So now I'm going to ask you these questions. Do each of these individual cells on their own have the same amount of DNA as the parent cell we started with in the video? No, right? It's halved because we have made, what are these 4 cells? They're sex cells, but what's the term we call it?
Gametes.
Gametes, you got it. All right, so we've made our gametes now. Now it has half the DNA that it originally started with before meiosis. And this, the cell division process, is meiosis 2, right? All right, so now we have a general overview. So here's meiosis in the female, and then meiosis in the male takes part like that. And so now we have our gametes that take part in sexual reproduction. And so where on this diagram would you find meiosis 1? Would it be here or here? At the top, right? And then meiosis 2 would fit right there, right? Okay. And so now once you have your gametes, right, this is what happens in the mother and this is what happens in the father. They come together with their own specific DNA, as you'll see quickly here. See? So their own specific DNA set, and that was combined and we start from the beginning again. So that was our interactive video, kind of looking at that. So are we still good with that? Any questions on key terms? We doing all right? Yeah? Okay. All right, awesome. So now, okay, we'll go to our next part. So our pipe cleaner activity. So we're gonna have you guys go through the process now. So I've showed you and tried to ask questions. Now we're gonna get you guys to work through it. So what's gonna happen is you guys are gonna get into groups of 2 or 3, and I have, for the purpose of this one, we won't actually do it, we'll modify a little bit. I'll model it in front for you, but each group would get these required supplies. So what we have is a activity sheet with questions. So this would outline the process. And then an observation sheet to write down each step that you show, right? And so yes, I would hand these out. I would get you guys into group of 2 and 3, and we'll just model out. We have our pipe cleaners here, and our beads, and this will model. I will show you guys. Change. Okay.
Sweet.
So now we've got our little pipe cleaners, and I'm just going to model the process for you. So the one key thing is to be careful because these are pipe cleaners. They will stab you if you twist them the wrong way. Okay, so we're going to go through the activity. So this is a little bit of background. We've already gone through that part. But the objective here is to model meiosis 1, meiosis 2, and crossing over. And so what these beads will represent are the alleles, right, that are changed in crossing over. So can I have a volunteer to go through the first step? Who wants to volunteer? Who wants to go through the first step? Okay, I'll model the first couple steps, then I'll have a volunteer come up and take part in the next part of the step. So at the beginning, we have our chromosomes represented in space, right? They're just floating around. Can anyone tell me, if these are homologous chromosomes, what the different colors represent this time? From the father and the mother, right? And this exists in a pair as a chromosome, right? Exactly. So that's why we have them in different colors. Okay, and so they would go through these questions. What links the 2 sister chromatids? So what does link the 2 sister chromatids together? Centromere. Exactly. And so when they prepare for cell division, they will duplicate like this. Look, it's a chromosome, duplicated chromosome with a centromere, right? And so that happens with all of the pairs. So the student would go through, create their chromosome chromosomes. And we have different sizes to show different homologous pairs, right? Okay, so that's how they would exist. They'd just be floating around in space. And, yeah, in space. And so we've already gone through what homologous chromosomes are. So now we're going to help it replicate. So we've already doubled it. Now we have to attach the bead to its respectful chromosome. So this is the bead that will be exchanged. And so before the cell division, they will line up in their pairs, like so. Okay. And what process then happens?
Cross over.
Exactly, crossing over. So to show that, take our beads off. That. We have our homologous pairs that have now crossed over. So this might be a different allele or it might not be, but it is from the maternal piece of the homologous chromosome, right? And so they would also be drawing this throughout. Sorry, I forgot to mention back to this. So they would probably draw something like this. At this point, right before it divides, we have it specified here as stage 1. Yeah, so the next step would be stage 1. So now you're showing what's going to happen right before it divides. So the first cell division process happens. They're going to separate, and we have 2 cells now. So in their observation sheet, under stage 2, when they show the next part, they're going to draw 2 circles, right? And they're going to draw what they see. So red with a little blue, and then a small one with a little blue, and vice versa. And then the next part is going to separate. So they go along the midline now, and it separates at the centromere, right? And this is meiosis 2, right? Meiosis 2, because they've already separated once, right? And so now the second cell division occurs. Okay. There. Okay, and so now we have 4 different gamete cells. And again, they would take this, write it in on their meiosis 2 section, right? And so then they would draw that in. There are more questions to answer as they go along on the sheet. And when we finish, there are just quick review questions. So I can ask you guys these questions here. How many chromosomes did your original parent cell have at the beginning of the activity? So how many X's did we have at the start?
4.
Exactly, so 4 chromosomes. So now, how many chromosomes did each of your daughter cells have at the end of the activity? So daughter cells. These are circles around each cell. So the gametes, how many chromosomes do they have now?
Still 4.
2 of each, right? We have 1 gamete here, 1 gamete here, 1 gamete here, and 1 here. So that's half, right? Because when they come together during sexual reproduction, the gametes combine and they can make a child that has this type of chromosome, right? Yeah, that's going to fall apart, but you guys get the idea here. Okay, and then we kind of touched this in our mitosis section. If the human somatic cells have 46 chromosomes, how many chromosomes do human gametes have?
Come on, guys.
So we started off with 4, now we have 2. Half of 46?
23.
There we go, 23 gametes. Perfect. And so that's how the activity would go. And then I would just ask for all the supplies back. And yeah, so there's that. And then what we would have is they can go back and we'd give them access to this video here so they can review mitosis and meiosis. So yes, forgot about that. So yeah, they'd have access to this video again, so you can do a comparison of mitosis and meiosis, all of this stuff, to review some of the key terms in practice if they want to on their own time. So now, we'll pass it over to Kim, who will talk about sexual reproduction.
Yeah. I think the video's still running, so that's good. I'll check that.
I think so too. Oh my god.
Again.
Alright, so I'm gonna go right ahead then. So yeah, my section of our lesson here is on sexual reproduction aspects. So far, we've started with our jigsaw activity, and we've just touched on sexual reproduction, but we've also learned binary fission and asexual reproduction and mitosis, all after that jigsaw activity, and then Gabe just went through the process of meiosis with everyone. So we've covered quite a bit so far. So I want to do a little KWL activity here before we get into sexual reproduction. So first off, I want you to get the students into groups of 4, and obviously just because of this presentation style, I can't do that with you guys. So I would get the students into groups of 4, and they would discuss in that group their answers for the first 2 questions of what do you already know, what do you know about sexual reproduction already, and what do you want to know. So and then I would bring it back to the class, and I would have those groups share some of the answers, and I write them out on the board. So for the first question, what do the students already know about sexual reproduction? I would expect that they would come up with answers so far from their learning would be that it involves the egg and the sperm cells that are gamete cells, and they come together to form an embryo, which then implants it into the uterus, grows into human, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of what I would guess that they would know already about sexual reproduction. And what do I want them to know, or what do you want to know? Would be how the chromosomes behave in sexual reproduction and what that behavior is, since we've already covered all about chromosomes and all about cell division. So I'd expect that they want to know more about the interaction of cells and cell division and chromosomes in the sexual reproduction. And then I would leave the what you have learned part, and we'll come back to it at the end. Okay, so to learn about sexual reproduction, I have a Khan Academy video here for you guys. So I have a worksheet to go along with this video. It's very general, and it has some general pictures of an egg and a sperm cell, and it has the students write out how many chromosomes are in each cell, and describe that they're gametes and how many chromosomes they have in human cells. I want them to write them down beside it, and then it asks them to also draw a picture of the zygote, which has all 46 chromosomes, and they have to draw out 46 in different colors, and then ask them what is a zygote, and it's a very general note section, but I want them to kind of write their own notes, and it's not too guided, the worksheet, it's kind of general, and yeah, so they can take notes as they would normally. So let's start off with this video.
I touched on this a little bit in the video on how variation can be introduced into a population, but I think it's fairly common knowledge that all of us, where I talk about us, I'm talking about human beings, and frankly, most eukaryotic organisms were the product of sexual reproduction. So if this is the first cell that had the potential to become Sal, we know that this first cell, let me say this is the nucleus of that first cell, so I can draw the whole cell and all that. Let's just focus on the nucleus. That it has 23 chromosomes, or let me put it this way, it has 46 chromosomes, 23 from my father and 23 from my mother. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 from my father. And then let's say that last one actually helps determine my gender, or it fully determines my gender. That's my Y chromosome. And let's say I had 23 homologous chromosomes, or one chromosome that kind of was the homologue for each of these, but I have 23 of them from my mother. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll just do, you get the idea. I can just draw a bunch of them. And then I have the X chromosome that was essentially the gender, one of the gender determining chromosomes from my mother. And we learned before that each of these pairs are homologous chromosomes, that they essentially code for the same gene, one from my father and one from my mother. Now, that first cell that had the potential to become me, it was the product of fertilization of an egg from my mother. So an egg from my mother, so the egg from my mother, the nucleus, well, I'll just draw the whole egg like that. It had, and let me just I'll just focus on the DNA from now. So my mother's DNA, it had 23 chromosomes. So it didn't have pairs, and this is key. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and then 23 was let's say that's the X chromosome. And so it's a combination of this from my mother, so this is from my mother, and a sperm from my father. So let me do that here, and I'll draw the sperm much larger than it is normally relative to the egg. This is kind of the nucleus of the egg, but let's say that this is a sperm. It has a tail that helps it swim, and it has 26 chromosomes. Sorry, 23 chromosomes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And it has that Y chromosome. And let me do that Y chromosome in a separate color. And just as a side, this unification, this fertilization that occurred from this sperm cell to this egg cell, so it essentially penetrates into this egg cell, and it creates this zygote, which is a fertilized egg cell from my mother, and this contains all DNA from both my father and my mother. So this very first cell that was created from this fertilized egg, this is called a zygote, and it's a product of fertilization between two gametes. Gametes. So that's a gamete, and this is a gamete. So you can view these both a sperm cell or a egg cell. They're both examples of gametes. Now, the whole reason why I'm doing this is I want to introduce you, well, and I already introduced this notion to you when we talked about variation of population, is that, look, this has my full chromosome complement. It has 23 pairs, and each pair is a pair of homologous chromosomes. They essentially code for the same things, one from my mother, one from my father, and that is 46 individual chromosomes. 46 chromosomes, 23 from my mother, 23 from my father. These gametes, they each have only 23 chromosomes. 23 chromosomes. Or half the number of a full complement, 23 chromosomes. Now, everything that I'm talking about here, the number 46 or 23 pairs or 23 individual chromosomes, this is unique to human beings. If I talked about other species, they might have 10 chromosomes or they might have 5 chromosomes. But one thing that is universal for all sexually reproducing organisms is that gametes have half the number of chromosomes as the zygote, or as you can kind of view it as the organism itself, the way we conventionally think about it. So when people talk about half the number of chromosomes, they say it has a haploid number. And that literally just means half the number of chromosomes. It's very easy to memorize, because haploid.
Okay, so that part was talking about the gametes and the formation of the zygote, right? So, yeah, so fertilization occurs when the sperm penetrates into the egg, right? And then the chromosomes are combined. So that's 23 chromosomes from the father and 23 chromosomes from the mother. And they come together and they're combined to form a zygote, which has a full set of chromosomes, which in the case of humans, that's 46. So we went from the gamete cells that each have 23 chromosomes to the zygote cell that has 46 chromosomes. And like he said on the video there, that's also very specific to humans as a species. Different species have different numbers of chromosomes. But the key thing to remember is that the gamete cells will always have half of the chromosomes that the zygote cell would have, or regular somatic body cells have. Okay. Now the video is going to go over more about specifically the zygote and what happens after the fertilization occurs.
Thrown out of the way. Let's talk a little bit about zygotes and how do zygotes turn into people, and then how do those people essentially produce gametes, which then can fertilize other people's gametes to form more zygotes. So the general idea, so that very first cell that was essentially my mom's egg fertilized by a sperm cell from my father, that was a zygote. And as soon as it's successfully fertilized, it has 2N, or it has the diploid number of chromosomes in the case of humans, which I believe I am one of them. I have 46 chromosomes. And then this cell right here begins to split and divide over and over and over again. We'll do a whole series of videos on the actual mechanics of that, but it splits by a mechanism called mitosis. mitosis. And mitosis literally is just a cell splitting to form copies of itself. So it just starts splitting into two more cells that are two. And actually, let me do it this way, just because the actual way it works is right when a cell is split, the cells that it splits into aren't that much larger than the original one. But now each of these have 2N chromosomes, or 46 in the case of humans. And you keep splitting, and it happens over and over and over again. So eventually, so you know, then these keep, well, let me just do it this way. And this keeps splitting, then you have, and I'll go into their words for some of these initial collections of cells, but I won't go into that right now. 2N, all of these are original copies from a genetic point of view of that original cell. And then eventually, they start to really, you know, start to have tons of them. There's just a gazillion of them that starts to, that, you know, just they're all duplicates of this cell, and they all contain the 2N number of chromosomes, the diploid number of chromosomes. They all contain that, all of my genetic material, but based on how they relate to each other and what they see around them, they start differentiating. So maybe, so all of these have 2N numbers, so they're all diploid, and the mitosis is, this is the process the whole time as these divide. One cell into two cells, and those two cells into four cells, and keep going. And then these begin to differentiate. Maybe these cells eventually differentiate into things that'll turn into my brain. These cells right here differentiate into things that'll turn into my heart. These cells here differentiate into things that will turn into my lungs, and so forth and so on. And eventually, you get a, in the case, you get a human being, but it doesn't have to be a human being. It could be whatever species we happen to be talking about. So let me draw the human being. So I'll draw just see my best shot at an outline of a human being. Two kind of products of mitosis that started off with that zygote, and it just kept dividing and dividing and dividing into mitosis. And but it differentiated into, you know, I said some of them will turn into brain cells, some of them will turn into heart cells. I mean, the whole process of differentiation is actually fascinating. We'll talk a lot more about that when we talk about stem cells. But
Okay, so we'll stop the video there. Go back a little bit. There. Okay. So, like we said before, so now we've learned about how the gametes come together and produce a zygote and fertilization. And so he starts out with a picture of the zygote over there, and then it goes through mitosis, which we learned about earlier in class, right? We learned with Paige in the jigsaw about mitosis. So that essentially creates the two daughter cells. And then that process of mitosis continues to happen until eventually we have a bunch of cells, like he said, one cell, the zygote, turns into two cells turn into four cells, 4 into 8, and then so on, until we get a full human being, essentially. And then, like how we went through in our KWL, you guys know that that zygote eventually develops into the embryo, which implants itself into the uterine lining, which grows into a human, right? And then we have a full human. And I like how in the video he says how the cells that are produced then become specialized and they come into the different areas of the body. And then that's how a full human eventually develops. And that process takes 9 months in humans. In different species, it takes different times and they have different amounts of cells, but the sexual reproduction aspect is essentially the same. So just to sum up again on sexual reproduction here, so you should have your notes on your worksheet so far. So the big points that we went through here is the fertilization of the egg by the sperm leading into the formation of the zygote. And those are some of the key terms that you needed to know from the jigsaw, right? So we have gametes, and then those gametes are the sperm and egg cells, which then form the zygote, which has a full, complete set of 46 chromosomes in humans, but that is double the number of the gamete cells. And then the next point, so the zygote contains half of the DNA from the mother and half of the DNA from the father, resulting in a cell with a full set of DNA. So you have half chromosomes from your father, half chromosomes from mother. So in humans, that is 23 and 23. And they come together to be the full set of 46 chromosomes. And then from there, the zygote then undergoes a cell division process called mitosis, which results in two daughter cells that have identical sets of DNA and chromosomes to the original parent cell. And then that process of mitosis, cell division, keeps occurring until we have a full human being with many different cells that perform many different functions in the body. Okay. So then I would return again to the what did we learn so far with sexual reproduction here. So the students would essentially just basically we come back together as a class and they would again go back into their groups of 4 and discuss what they learned from the sexual reproduction section of class today. And then we come back together as a class and I complete my writing on the board under the what did we learn section. And I would have them give me points that they learned so far. Hopefully they hit all the points that I put up there. Okay, so now we're going to do a bit of a review. We covered a lot in class so far today. We started with the jigsaw and we touched on each of our subject areas, and we did a section on asexual reproduction and binary fission, and we moved and we did mitosis, and then we did that full activity that Gabe did with you guys on meiosis. So that's a lot of information we covered today. So I want to go through a little Kahoot here for you guys, and we're gonna go and do some questions.
That's true, I guess. Oh, maybe I want to do it on my iPad. You can click faster. Oh, my iPad's recording. I can't.
Gonna lose.
Oh, this is good.
So you guys can take out your devices and then go to kahoot.it, and I will bring up our section for you guys here.
Oh my.
Okay, so you just enter in your PIN number on the screen there. So 146555.
Let's do it.
And it's going to ask you to enter in your name, so just enter in your name and then you should show up.
Oh, I should too. Now that I look up.
Okay, that was everyone? Yeah? Is everyone in there wanting to be?
Bring it on!
Alright, let's start. I'm sure this gives our
Oh
groups
my
one.
gosh.
I'm gonna try and get them all wrong.
So name a reason why cells divide. It's to fight
Oh.
disease, they have too much DNA, they do not have enough proteins, or to repair damaged cells. I forgot you have to actually look at the screen.
Yeah,
I did too! I did too! It was scary!
Okay, so the correct answer was to repair damaged cells. Yeah, so the cells always have the same amount of DNA. So that's, in humans, that's 46 chromosomes. They never have too much DNA, so I'm glad that no one picked that answer. Or there's one person that picked that answer, but that's why that is wrong. And same with to fight disease, that's not what is occurring. It's to repair or grow the human. So next here. Chromosomes contain somatic cells, DNA, the nucleus, or genes.
Oh, what? I picked the wrong one. I know.
It's only the chromosome, not the cell. Chromosomes contain
Oh,
DNA,
You're
yeah.
wrong.
I went for it.
Me too.
Misconception.
Okay. Yeah, so genes are the specific traits, not actually in the chromosomes, right? That's specifically in the DNA, not the chromosome. Chromosome contains the bundled sections of DNA.
No.
Okay, dog gamete cells contain 40 chromosomes, so how many chromosomes do brain cells have?
I did it wrong. I totally got it wrong. I was trying to, I heard some beeps and I just went for it.
Yeah, 80. Okay, so that question
Oh,
wasn't done
no.
as well as I would have hoped. So,
Everyone went for
a
it.
dog gamete cell. So,
Oh, I
gamete
didn't
cells,
even read
remember,
gamete.
are sperm and egg cells, right? So they should contain half of the amount of chromosomes that a zygote or a normal somatic body cell would have. And a brain cell is a normal somatic body cell, it's not a gamete, right?
Okay.
So the brain gamete cell should contain double the number that the gamete cells, so 40 times 2 is 80 chromosomes. Okay, next question. So how many chromosomes do human somatic cells have? We have 23, 8, 32, or 46? 46.
I like missed it. I was like,
Perfect, guys.
Oh.
Great answers. So I don't need to go over that.
Good job, guys.
Alright, which actually describes the process of fertilization?
I could probably change my answer. I didn't really read.
Yeah, okay, so fertilization is when the two gamete cells come together, the sperm and the egg, to create the zygote. That is the process of fertilization. So good job there, guys. Human sperm cells contain, actually, I'm just going to skip this one because I don't like it. Okay. Asexual reproduction is common in birds, fungi, fish, or humans.
Really listen to my section, guys.
Fungi, yeah. So birds, fish, and humans all reproduce through sexual reproduction. The disadvantage of asexual reproduction is that it occurs rapidly. There's reduced variability. Many offspring are produced, and there's no need for a mate. Yeah, so there's reduced variability in asexual reproduction, right? Because the single cell is producing an essentially duplicate cell of itself. So it won't be able to respond well to changes in environments because of its reduced variability. Okay, binary fission is a type of asexual reproduction. True or false? Yeah, true. Binary fission is a type of asexual reproduction. Binary fission occurs in multicellular organisms or single-celled organisms.
I feel like you break your phone playing this.
Yeah, single-celled organisms. So sexual reproduction occurs in multicellular organisms. Which of the following is true of mitosis? Part of asexual reproduction, cells produced have half the chromosomes of parent cells, produced individual daughter cells, or involves two-phase splitting. Yeah, it results in two identical daughter cells that have the same set of chromosomes as the others, right? Yeah, so the two cases of splitting or cell division is wrong, right? Because that happens in meiosis. Where in mitosis there's just one cell division where you create chromosomes that have, or cells that have 46 chromosomes, not half like meiosis. Okay, mitosis, is used to produce gamete cells for fertilization, store DNA, repair, replace cells, or produce identical single-cell organisms. Yeah, to repair and replace cells. DNA replication occurs during mitosis. True or false?
Oh, they switched the colors. That was hard. I almost went for blue. Like, just off, like, didn't happen.
Yeah. So this is a picture of.
Oh my goodness.
Gotta be careful, guys. This one.
Maybe. No. Yes. Maybe. Still don't know. You got 10 seconds. Make the right choice.
Yeah, meiosis. Great job,
Whoa,
guys.
good
Everyone got
class.
that one. You can see the four
Good job, Dave.
gamete
Good
cells
teacher.
produced at the end. Alright, what is true of meiosis? It involves one stage of splitting. It results in the formation of gametes. It occurs only in single-celled organisms, or in humans it produces cells that have 46 chromosomes.
I climbed back up. I was at the bottom and I made it up.
So which are gametes?
Oh my gosh.
That was quick.
Oh
What
my
is zygote?
goodness.
This one for December last year.
This is your last?
Yeah, cells form through fertilization. And second last one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, see.
Says okay, need to read gamete zygote.
Yeah, 24. So that's double the
Back.
amount, right?
Oh, that's so funny.
Climbed out of the basement. Sorry,
Alright.
dog.
Great, so that was a review of our section. Thanks, guys.
I can turn off the video now, right?
Yep.